This will be a quick introduction to how to create groupings and then groups within MyCourses. Now, a grouping is a collection of groups. So say you have a class you want to break into 3 groups, and you do that, and then the next week you want to put the 3 different groups together, but each of those 3 groups is called a grouping. So a collection of groups to be used at one time is a grouping. And then you break down this individual groups within that. And I'm going to show you how to create a grouping and then create groups. And as a real quick qualifier for this tutorial, what I'm about to do is I'm going to show you how to basically create a grouping, and then I'll have you create that, but then we have to go back and then we have to go and create a group or groups that are part of that grouping. And then I'll come back after you've done that, and I'm going to go back to groupings. And this isn't too complicated, because at that point in time, if I come down here and hit this little gadget here, it will see the groups that exist and allow me to pull them in. So the 3 steps are: we create a grouping, we then create some groups, then we put those groups in the grouping. So it's not complex, but we create a grouping, which I'll explain. We'll create groups, which I'll explain. And then we go back to the grouping and put the groups in the grouping we created. That sounds complex, but when you see this jumps around a little, that is why. First of all, just in the settings, simple as you please, if you go to settings for the main course itself, and then you'll see groups as an option. There are options here. You can say that you want it to default to no groups, and you can change this later. I want to use groups, so that's important that separate groups is on. And there's not a default grouping. And I just explained what grouping is, and if you're going to use several, you wouldn't want to have a default one, I would imagine. Although it would always go to that if you didn't set it. Okay, with that said, that is correct. So now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to go to users, and then from there, I'm going to go to groups. Now there's a couple of things to notice in this layout, just so you know. First of all, at the top, this determines what you're looking at. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to go to groupings, and I'm going to create a new grouping, and that grouping is going to be called week 6. So I create a grouping, and it will initially have nothing in it except a name. And real quickly, the fashion for creating a group that you're going to populate then with students in a moment is just to go ahead and give it a name. I hit create group. So I'll just put in, and then I come down here and I hit save changes. Now what that's going to do is that's just going to have the group as a placeholder that I'll then populate. And if you're real comfortable with like AI and whatnot, a workaround where you can just put in these little unpopulated groups automatically is if I hit import groups, it will allow me to upload a text file that AI can generate if you want to do that, but I'll make another tutorial. We don't have to worry about that today. Week 6 groups right here, and they have no students in them yet. I'll go ahead and I'll go to week 6 group A. I hit add remove users, then all my students from the class will show up right there. And moments ago, of course, I did come up with the groups I'm going to have for week 6. And then what one does is they come over here to select it and hit add. But what I can do is I can select all of them at once for this group by holding down a control. And then I just hit add, and they'll populate there. I'm going to do one last thing though. I'm going to climb down here and I'm going to I'm going to put myself in there as well. And I'll be in each group so that I can see each group. And I'm going to do this repeatedly for the other 2. Okay, now we'll hop back over to grouping because we've created the groups that are going to go in the grouping we previously made. Okay, now that I have that grouping, this is a little unusual. There's a small icon here that you need to go to. You can see that's there, but there's nothing in here. So I'm going to choose this right here. Okay, and the next step is I'm going to go back to that grouping, and I get there by going here. I go to groupings, and I see week 6, and look at this is a little icon. It's tricky to find. I hit that. And then I say that I would like, in this grouping, I would like to have, and I'm holding down the control key, group A, group B, and C. I hit add, I come down here, I go back to groupings. And now this grouping is going to be set up, which I'll show you right now, which is also pretty easy. So assuming everyone knows how to set up their forum, I'm going to skip right to where I assign groups within the forum. So now within the discussion itself, what I have to do is I have to go to common module settings. And then I say, I'm going to come down here. It says separate groups, but it says grouping. The grouping I want is obviously going to be week 6. Okay, and I hit save changes. And now it's ready to go. And then if I come back to the unit 6 itself, and I'll come back here, and it says week 6 discussion. But look at this, it says separate groups and week 6. So I know all that's set correctly.